anyone that's successful, that's experiencing anything worthwhile, when they experience these setbacks, has to remember that that's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the story.
Welcome to the Council of Dudes podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Brusco. I am a father, a husband, the founder of Agora Social Club, a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a certified life coach, and a facilitator of the Council of Dudes men's group. This podcast is here to help you tap into and follow your golden thread, that feeling that pulls you forward to become the best version of yourself. If you're someone who's into personal development and self-help and is looking to live a life of more alignment, then this is the podcast for you. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification button, and follow along on the journey of the show.
What's up, everybody? My name is Jason Rosario, the founder of The Lives of Men, and grateful to be in this conversation here with my brother Vinny on the Council of Dudes podcast.
And here we go.
I don't know if you read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, one of my favorite books. And so without giving it all away, you should absolutely read it. But it's
Personal development book or
personal development book.
What isn't?
Yeah, exactly. But The Big Leap is exactly what it sounds like. It's, he talks about how so many of us are operating in our zone of greatness, probably zone of competence, but not in our zone of genius. We're like sort of really hitting on all cylinders. So he talks about the reason why we don't hit our zone of genius is because all of us have what he calls an upper limit problem. When we get to close to that zone of genius, we start to self-sabotage, things happen, we, a ton of different things, self-inflicted ills that prevent us from making that big leap. And so as part of a book, he was like, a lot of us are operating in our zone of excellence and we feel like we're in our zone of genius, but it's not. And so in doing this work that we're doing, right, like editing the videos and doing a lot, we might feel like we're doing the thing, but it's not quite the zone of genius. And the zone of genius is actually doing less things and more of the things that actually matter, that you are uniquely qualified to do. And I think that to me is what I'm trying to always be in search of. It's like, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. I can edit. I can do all the things. But is this the zone of genius? Is this maximizing my energy right now, my talents, my abilities, my gifts? And then if not, then how do I, to your point, how do I siphon that off to somebody else so I can really focus on the things that really matter?
Yeah, that threshold, right? It's like I think of like the glass ceiling that we all kind of come into. And then what did he attribute those cycles to? Because it seems like they work in cycles, right? And then like you'll break out of it in some regard, but then you'll find yourself back in that circle. So it is moving forward, right, in this amazing way, but it's like circle, 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 forward, circle, 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 forward. Yeah. And like I guess there's a lesson to learn within that cycle.
Yeah. My lesson was what I told you about abundance.
Yeah.
Remember what I said?
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah.
It's creating the capacity. And I don't want to give the book away, but one of the takeaways that I had in reading it that prevents me from operating in my zone of genius and making the big leap from being excellent to being sort of in that zone is that I have not made the capacity, I hadn't made the room yet to hold the things that I want to achieve that are in my zone of genius. And so what holds us back, if your question was what holds us back from operating in that space, is not believing that we can operate in that space, finding ways to diminish what that space means, fear, right? Being afraid of being really seen and being exposed, quote unquote, exposed by the world. And so having the sense of imposter syndrome oftentimes holds us back. People's expectations, sometimes our own expectations, hold us back. So there's a plethora of different things that prevent us from really operating in that space. Because what happens, and you probably heard this in different language, but what happens in that zone of genius, in that space when you're really in your bag, as it were, what happens is that it's a very lonely place to be. Right? You talk about leadership being a very lonely place because who do you talk to? Who do you share your fears with? Who do you share your insecurities with? If you're at the top of the top, right? If you're operating in that space. And so oftentimes it feels very lonely and exposing. It's like I'm just going to just double down into my little cave, my cocoon. And that itself prevents you from being and operating in that zone of genius. So there's a lot of self-sabotage, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of thinking small, right? All things that we hear, but we don't realize how taken together all of that just really impacts us in a negative way.
Do you think that people, because you look at successful, like, again, we'll just call it successful people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, did they all go through this? Right? Or are there those that just find themselves, right? And then do they have to go through it in a back engineering way, right? Like if maybe it wasn't forward progress, but it's a backwards progress because, whatever it is, they landed in this place of deemed success, right? For whatever metric you want to use. And now it becomes this, you've arrived and now you're going backwards to it. I think that you keep on going through these. Again, I think that you get to a point, then you grow and you realize you get to a point where you realize, okay, the goalposts are always going to move. That's the game. That's how this works. And that's somewhat beautiful in its own right. It's frustrating as shit, but it's also beautiful in its own right. But I wonder those people who have seemingly the overnight success, and we all know there's been years and years of building up to that. I wonder if there's a back engineering that they have to do with that.
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to assume that anyone that has achieved any marker of success, regardless of how one defines it, has gone through a period or multiple periods of, yes, I've made it. And, kind of, I've reached the mountaintop. And then something happens, that upper limit problem, right? That he defines it, that Gay Hendricks defines in the book. They hit that upper limit problem and then somehow find themselves back at quote unquote square one. And we all have an upper limit problem. We all have something that's holding us back from breaking through. And what I find, and just in the readings that I do and sort of the studying that I do of really successful people, is that as long as you're not stuck there, right? As long as you don't suffer a loss, you don't take a hit, and sort of find yourself feeling like you're starting over, feeling like you're backtracking. In the grand scheme of things, you're not backtracking. It's just information. You're just learning. It's information that's going to help you, hopefully, if applied well, propel you forward. But if you're not stuck there, if you don't allow yourself to kind of be stuck in the mud, then that perception of moving backwards, if you will, is just momentum forward. Same with things. It's an illusion of going backwards, right? So I think myself included, I'm very guilty of this. When I even just yesterday, I was writing my journal and I was like, man, I'll share something. So I didn't get a grant that I had applied for recently. It was a big grant, big organization. And I was really looking forward to it because it was early in the year. The decision was made just 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And I was looking at the grant and these monies and the affiliation with this organization as a real opportunity for momentum, right? Not only for the business, but also for the year. I was like, yo, I'm going to do this with the money. I'm going to do that, right? Like, or even just thinking.
I laugh because I understand exactly what you're saying. I get it.
Or even just the announcement of like, the Lives of Men is one of the 9 grants that this organization, like that alone was going to be a propelling force.
You're practicing the conversation in the post in the shower. It's so
absolutely. So I get the news. I didn't get it.
I'm sorry to hear that, by the way.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's setting up for something bigger.
Sure,
but
right.
And so of course I go into a spiral. I'm like, damn, what did I do wrong? Could have done this differently, whatever. And I'm like, so what am I going to do now? It's what you just said. It's like, now I'm back to square one, where in my mind, I had already gotten the grant, right? Like that's what's hard about these things is to be successful in any worthwhile endeavor. You have to have done the thing in your mind and in your spirit, right? You have to have experienced it, right? It's what people call, not faking it till you make it.
Act as if,
right? Like embodying the thing. So I had already embodied the fact that I had gotten this grant. Not because I was already planning what I was going to do with the money, but it's just like, that's what you have to do if you're a manifester, right? You have to believe it in that way.
And you have to believe it in a way that is so unwavering.
Absolutely. And that's what people
And
call
that's almost
delusional.
impossible.
That's what people
right?
call delulu. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost impossible to have that type of steadfastness and that focus. For myself, because naturally, there's going to be these whispers and these voices of doubt and fear and self. All these things are going to percolate. Like, it's a part of it. Like, just as much as anything else is a part of it, so is the fear, so is the setback, so is the yeah, but you're kind of kidding yourself here, right? Like, so it's such a wrestling match internally too that you're navigating, and then to step into that space and try to embody it is so much energy to put into it. But continue.
Yeah, no. So that had that experience that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And so I felt like what you just described is like, oh man, I'm moving down the field and I'm achieving success. That happens. Now I feel like, oh damn, I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
And so to bring it kind of full circle with what we're talking about, it's if I allow myself to stay in that moment and throw myself a pity party and stop seeing all of the other wonderful things that are happening. The fact that you and I are here having this conversation, and that now my work is going to reach another audience that perhaps wasn't aware of my work. The fact that we're building a brotherhood, the fact that I just closed another deal with a New York City high school. Like, there are things that are still happening. And so that's why I said it's information. So anyone that's successful, that's experiencing anything worthwhile, when they experience these setbacks, has to remember that that's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the story.
Yeah. And I think that's a key point, is it's just information.
Yeah.
It's just getting, okay, so now we have to pivot again. All right. You have to move again,
Yeah.
keep on moving. It's not necessarily a pick six, but it's definitely sometimes feels like a sack that sets you back a few yards. Yeah. And that could be very, I don't want to say exhausting. I mean, that's deflating. It could be very, very deflating, especially when you have these aspirations, and it does feel like this next thing is it's weird though, because you feel like it's this next thing. And there's that delusional piece that you mentioned where, like, are you just the guy in the casino who's like, oh no, it's this machine, cling, cling, and you're dumping all this. Oh no, it wasn't that one because it's, the moon and then this and then all, the carpet has a stain. That one has the number 6 on it, so I'll avoid. And I'm going to go to this one. And now you're just like, are you just looking and searching to put this piece, and this puzzle together? Or is there a knowing, right? Because there's a difference in that, and that knowing, as much as it feels like there's a knowing, and it's not necessarily a knowing of the next thing, it's a knowing of 50 things, or the knowing of the end result that will lead you to this current moment, right? And it's just about like closing the gap between the current knowing and the future knowing, and not relying on the next knowing. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. And I love that you said that, because it's both.
Yeah.
It's equal parts faith, but also equal parts you realizing that your entire life is a series of receipts.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? I mean that to my point about abundance, you have to practice abundance. There's a practice of abundance, right? Like, the idea that abundance just happens to us is a very spiritually guided thing. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. That's part of where my faith comes in. It's part of where my ability to believe in the vision yet unseen comes in. But I couple that with, when I look at the things that I've achieved in my life, they have been a product of my continued work ethic, my continued ability to develop relationships. So practical behaviors that I'm continuing to do right now. So you take those two things together, that's what contributes to my ability to believe so deeply, because it's not just me thinking that there's this sort of unseen force that's working on my behalf. That's true, and I believe in that, but I also believe in the work that I'm practically putting in every day. And that's the difference between those people that are sort of like, they believe in things so much, they do the meditations, the manifestations and all that, but they're not doing the work, and then they wonder why things aren't happening for them. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing the work, right? Here's this practical, putting one step in front of the other, chop wood, carry water, right? And the idea that there's something that you have to do. And even in the Bible, I know you do, it says you have to be a co-creator with God, right? God is God, and God does the thing, but you have to do your part in co-creating with God. And I think that to me is, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, God helps those who help themselves type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and doing the work can feel at times like, I mean, I fall into this loop, and I think a lot of men do, is doing enough. Are you doing enough?
Well, what's enough?
Right.
Let's start there.
Right. And it's a great place to start. So, I could speak for myself when I say that, doing enough never feels like enough, even though I'm doing probably more than most from a comparison narrative, but then also probably doing more than I should be for my own health capacity, right? And that in its own right, and I think a lot of men, I mean, I'm sure you could attest this as well in the groups, there is this sense of enough, right? And we could all sit around in a circle, or we could sit in our beds at night and we could say words of affirmation. I am enough. You could put it on a Post-it note and write it on your mirror and look at yourself every day. I am enough. I am enough. But unless there's a true embodiment of being enough and on a deep, deep level, nothing ever feels like it's enough. Showing up, the smallest step forward or the biggest leap forward, the biggest jump forward, still isn't enough. So that's a very rough area to navigate, as well as the idea of being enough.
Yeah. And look, I think you and I connected on this point, and that's why I always say, just even in the work that I do, none of this work is about telling men what to be or how to be. It's about modeling behavior that I'm actively exploring myself in my own life and doing my best to embody those behaviors and those principles and those those protocols. And that embodiment is what sort of allows me to continue to move forward and know that it's not going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. And enough is this thing that I'm currently interrogating. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine just over the weekend about, I'm happy with the way my life has turned out, right? Just at this point in time, in this moment in time, if God forbid it would to end right now, I've lived a great life. I want to live a longer life. Absolutely. And I'm doing all the things health-wise and, in my life to make sure that or contribute to that happening. But I've learned to redefine what enough is for me. And I'm actively doing that every day. And for men, unfortunately, there are a couple things that are working against us as it relates to getting to that point of deciding what's enough. Number one, when we hear the word enough, oftentimes a lot of men think complacency. Two different things. You can be content with what you have, what you've achieved, and where you are in your stock in life. That doesn't mean you have to be complacent about that, right? Meaning, I'm content with the fact that right now in this moment, I have a warm house, my partner's at home, I have a beautiful dog, my daughter's healthy, and I'm building something that I'm fulfilled by every day. I'm content with that. Am I satisfied with that? No, that's why I'm waking up every day and I'm working. And so I've only gotten to that point because I've defined what enough is for me. The other thing is, there's this culture of grinding in the United States, in this country, right? We live in a world where you have to build the next $1 billion unicorn. Otherwise, you've not made it. And I'm not aspiring to that. I want to build a business that's profitable, that's sustainable, that gives me the freedom of mobility that I, want and deserve. But do I aspire to be a billionaire? Not necessarily. What I do aspire for is a way of life and a way of living and a way of feeling. And I would like for more men, especially in the United States, as we start to kind of unpack the idea of what it means to protect and provide, to start to redefine that for themselves and to start to question what is enough. We talk a lot about FU money, right? As kind of the marker of I've made it. That's great. But along the way, hopefully you've identified other markers of success that aren't that FU money. Because how many of us get to that FU money?
And what a negative energy.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have FU money. It's like, how about I have love money, right? Like, how about I have money that can spread some love,
I got
right?
freedom money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much there that, I do want to go into your own journey of how you stepped onto this kind of space, but I think that idea of enough for men and having a cultural definition of it is where they do get tripped up, and then also falling into that complacency state, because I always called it, how do I stay grateful and grounded yet aspirational? Because they do feel like they're counterintuitive, right? They do feel like one negates the other. That if I'm grateful and I feel that I have enough, then I'm going to get complacent. Although I know that that's not the truth, right? And how do I stay aspirational with this sense of being grounded and grateful? And that's one navigation. And then you bring up grind culture and hustle culture, and it's funny. We met kind of mutually through Jay Lacayo. We kind of connected that way, circumventally. Absolutely. And it's this idea of the grind culture is one thing, and there's consistency, right? And I was talking to Jay not that long ago. He's like, "Oh, when I think of you, I think consistent." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I would not consider myself consistent." He's like, "Absolutely, you're so consistent." But inside the jar, you don't see the label, right? Inside of your own vacuum of existence, behind your own eyes, you don't see how the world perceives you, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And I think that as much as grind culture is important, grind culture, true grind culture, is just a long enough timeline of consistency. And that consistency can be consistently inconsistent, but still being consistent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it'll ebb and flow.
Yeah.
So much to say about that. Yeah, I think, first of all, you don't realize how consistent you are because that's just the standard that you've set for yourself. Right. And that's why I think embodying this work is so important, because if you were performing for Jay, for whoever, for your audience, there would be a lack of integrity there. There would be a dissonance, right? You would feel a dissonance in your body every day. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm telling you guys this, but I'm not doing that. So that's one thing. The other thing about consistency and grind culture is, again, there's this fallacy of you have to work yourself to the bone. And if you're not on the verge of a heart attack, then you're not doing enough. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not aspiring. That's not
what I want, right? I mean, when, especially in starting your own thing, right? People almost expect you to some regard, right? Whether it be investors or whoever it is, to like starve your kids and no one's paying, like not. And I'm like, then I don't want to be associated with that person. Like if that's the mindset of the person, I don't want to be affiliated with that. Like I don't need that energy, nor do I want that energy, right? That's not an energy that moves. And again, I throw out the word energy, but that's really what it is. It's this constant wrestling of these external forces that are like pulling you, pushing you, and you have to kind of jujitsu your way around it and move accordingly. And it becomes, exhausting would not even make it a fair fight. But yeah, the grind culture thing is a real thing where, especially when you have people like the David Goggins, and maybe that works for him, but that doesn't work for most people.
Yeah. That's an extreme example.
It's all right. The wife of all people. That's all right. Gab.
No, it's an extreme example. I don't subscribe to grind culture. I subscribe to fulfilled culture. Do I feel like I'm moving the needle based on my own standards every day? And I know that that's a privilege in some ways, because I've done the work and I continue to do the work. I know that young men who are sort of lost right now, consuming content on social media, that's all they see. And so I understand that, and I'm empathetic to that. But, it's just about redefining, what it is that what are the worthwhile markers of success that we should aspire to achieve in our culture. And I don't think we do a good enough job of that.
Yeah, because we allocate our time, effort, and energy towards something that we think the ROI is going to be this finish line of living.
Yeah.
And then, you get to the finish line, you're like, what did I just do? Mm-hmm. Right? And all the living that you could have been doing was lost because you were suffocating yourself to try to provide something to feel like it's enough. I do want to, so you talked about kind of your stepping into this space, stepping into the men's work. How did you find yourself here? Like, what was your first step on this path?
Great question. And every time I get that question, I always say that it's a two-part answer. One is there's a practical answer to that, but then there's a more, just personal sort of, I came to this where I like to say that I've always been on this work, on this path. I'm the product of a single parent home, oldest of a total of 7 kids. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. Immigrant family from the Dominican Republic. And growing up, I didn't have a consistent father figure, right? I think it's that story to that point is not unlike a lot of men, right? And men who specifically do this work. But what I think made my journey different was that I've had to grow up very, very early. I had 3 siblings we had a big age gap between me and my sister and then the 3 youngest ones. So I had to, at 13, 14 years old, go get a job and help raise them, help my mom. Went off to college, had a daughter at 21. So, I've had to grow up sooner than I expected to in my life often. And so I've always been very aware of my responsibility, always had the sense of having I guess the responsibility of wanting more in my life because I was a provider, because I didn't want to become a statistic, and because I just wanted to live a better life from what I saw around me. And so being present to that lived experience and always interrogating that is what kind of brings me to this work in a roundabout way as a form of healing for myself. And so back in 2016, I started writing about my journey and my experience as a man. This was back in the Tumblr days. I was writing a blog called A Gentleman's Journal, and I was sharing it with a couple of friends of mine. And one of them was like, look, you need to put this out. We're going through very similar things. Put this out.
Yeah.
And I did. And, 2016, if you look back, it was, at the time of the rise of Trump 1.0. We had Me Too happening at the same time. And so there was this real conversation in the culture about men and masculinity and what it meant. I did not set out to insert myself into that conversation, but as the universe would have it, here I am. And so did that work, started to grow the platform, have these conversations publicly. Also realized very quickly that as someone who struggled with mental health and depression and anxiety issues, there was this really interesting intersection between what we call masculinity and mental health issues, right? So I found myself in the mental health space as well. So started having a conversation and wound up with a show on Yahoo News called Dear Men, where I sat down with Kevin Love and Swiss Beats and others to talk about their experiences as being men. And then it was just like, okay, now this is my work. And as I was doing this work, I realized that it was also my healing, vehicle for my own healing. So the more I sort of explored these themes and these concepts, the more I saw myself in the work. And that's where the idea of like, I need to embody, this is who I want to be, more so than I want to sort of be a thought leader in the space or a talking head in the space. I want to make sure that I'm doing this work for myself first. And that's what I built the entire business around, is making sure that I'm doing the things for me first, and then sort of saying, here's what I've learned, here, take what you want, take what works, leave what doesn't. And sort of kind of built a platform around that.
How do you manage your ego and all that? Because I'm sure there comes up when you're doing something for Yahoo and you start to receive these accolades or this recognition that you are all of those things. You are doing the work, but by doing the work, you become the talking head. And by being the talking head, you become the thought leader, which is all really, we add this like, I don't want to be those things, right? But they are important people. They are important hats to wear and roles to take on. So how do you keep your ego in check at each one of those?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's 2 things. One, I have a great network and support system around me that will never let me get too full of myself. So my mom, my sisters, my friends, so I have a great support system around me. But I also think I have a healthy sense of imposter syndrome. And I never drink my own Kool-Aid. I'm never in a room. I'm grateful that I've been in very big rooms and have had conversations with some really big people, but I've never, not that I don't believe I belong in those rooms, but I never thought of myself as bigger than the work. right? This work is bigger than me. Your question was, how do I find myself in this space? I didn't choose to be in the space. The space chose me, right? Like work chose me. My job is to be a proper steward of that, right? A proper messenger, whatever. I'm a source. I'm a vehicle. I'm not the source. I'm a mouthpiece for the source that needs to, and the message that needs to come through me. And that's how I see it. There are, even as we stand here today, there are people in this space that are great mouthpieces for the work. And when I look at them and I'm like, well, what are you actually doing in the community? What are you really doing to improve the lives of men, right? Ironically enough, that's the name of the platform. But what are you really doing in this space? And that to me is, again, I keep coming back to this word of embodiment, the idea of being in integrity with the work. If you do I believe, if you do any kind of healing work, whether it's mental health, whether it's masculinity work, whether it's, AA work, that work is going to always find a way to test you and make sure that you are in integrity with who you say you are and what you say you do. And that has been very true for me. I have experienced things in relationships, in my personal life, and in my career that are, I believe, messages from God that say, you have set yourself out to carry this message. I'm going to give you experiences and challenges to really see how about it you are. And every time I find myself in a position where I'm like, wow, like I'm wrestling with something, I'm like, yo, this is just part of the test to see if I'm really about this life.
Yeah. I laugh because I totally understand exactly where you're coming from. And then what also comes up is this idea of delusional, right? Because that's what I wrestle with, because we can convince ourselves of anything if we tell good enough story.
Yeah.
I look at, I look at that scene from Field of Dreams when he has to sell his house and his brother-in-law's like, yeah, sell the house, Ray, like you're bankrupt and all this stuff. And it's you come across these crossroads and these moments where it feels like, right, and going back to that embodiment feeling that it's not delusion, but it is this, how about this are you? Like, how much are you really about this, right? Let's find out. Mm-hmm. Let's put the cards on the table and let's play the game a little bit. And when you start to see that and you start to feel that becomes a game in its own right? Because now you're almost reading the table a little bit and you're able to say, okay, and that's when those setbacks no longer become setbacks, but they just become opportunities to say, okay, okay. And then in my lens, it's really just redirecting me to the proper path, right? I'm trying to force the river to go this way, but the river flow is the river flow. And who am I to start to carve out new pathways for the river? Mm-hmm. The river's perfect the way it is. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to dig a different trench because I want to go in this direction because I think it's going to be faster and better. Yeah. But the reality is the river flows the way it flows.
Yeah, you got to allow it. The delusion piece, I love, again, we're wrestling with a lot of the same things because there's a difference between a setback and a real risk that's irresponsible. We're not here. I don't think you're taking any risks that are irresponsible, that are putting your family in danger, that are putting your family at risk, that are putting your livelihood at risk. We can take risk and we're going to experience challenges along the way. But I think you have to have a certain level of self-awareness. And that's why I believe self-awareness is probably the most important quality that anyone, man, woman, child, alien, whatever, can develop in themselves is, can you assess for yourself, based on your observations, based on your lived experience, whether or not the decisions that you're making are long-term constructive or destructive? And what you just mentioned about sort of doubling down and building a business and knowing that it's going to be hard and knowing that those setbacks are going to happen, what gets a lot of people in trouble is that when they get to that point, they just double down. They're just gamblers. The inner gambler comes in and says, they don't see it as a setback and as an opportunity to learn, reflect, and then apply those lessons forward. They just look at it as an opportunity to double down like a gambler would. And that's we want to pay attention to that, right? Building a business can feel like a gamble, right? Like a casino, like a crapshoot, if you don't have the right level of self-awareness to say, okay, this is a setback. This is a setback that I can learn from and apply lessons to moving forward. Make that distinction from this is not the path, right? Those are two different things. My guiding, my North Star that allows me to make that decision is when I feel a level of friction that just feels too cumbersome, right? Friction is good, but when you feel friction where it almost feels like a complete stop of what you're doing, then I think that's when I'm like, okay, this is just not the path. To your point, the river, there's too much, there's a dam here. There's not a boulder that I need to flow around. There's just a dam here that's preventing the flow, my flow. So I'm just going to retreat, reassess, and then maybe go down a different path. Not try to break that down by any means necessary. It's just that's just not the path. And that's the difference between, being a gambler, having that gambler's mentality, and just being being gritty, right? The idea of grit, I think, is also important. So,
yeah, the grit aspect of things goes back to that grind hustle culture. And again, it's such a fine line. You recently did a podcast with your mom.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Man, the podcast with my mother. So my podcast is called Man of the House, and the name came to me because it's something that as men, we all aspire to achieve. It's a role that whether we've grown up with our fathers or not, we are told very early on that is what we should be achieving to become protector, provider.
Even as my son's 6 or whatever it is, if I'm going away,
you're the man of the house.
I'm like, dude, you're the man of the house.
That's right.
Right? Well, hold it down.
Hold it down.
You're 6 years old.
Yes.
You're scared to go in the basement by yourself, but you're the man of the house now.
So there you go.
Right? Perfect. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That has been sort of, when you asked earlier about what got me on this journey, it's I guess I internalized that ambition very early on in my life. So I thought, who better to start that conversation with than the source, my mom. And the reason I wanted to start there, obviously, because she's my mom, but also because so many of the cues that I've received, so many of the lessons that I've learned about what it means to be a man, and also what it means to be in relationship with women in my life, have come from my mother, directly and indirectly. And so I wanted to start unpacking that. And I did it, and it was amazing. I'm so proud of her because, my mom's first language isn't English, and she was very, when I asked her to be my first guest, her first question wasn't, oh my God, what am I going to say? She's like, what am I going to wear? The idea that, so she's been amazing, but it was great because, in real time, I'm writing a book. That conversation was going to happen anyway. And I just wanted to memorialize our relationship in that conversation in a way that was, that honored her, honored our relationship, because what you saw on camera is real. It's how we talk to each other every day. It's how we relate to each other every day. And I also realized that in this work around men and masculinity, we talk often about men and their dads, not a lot about men and their moms. And I thought it was important for us to put that chip on the table as an important part of this work that we need to really reflect on and sort of unpack, is our relationship with our moms. Because if our dads are the first people that we want to impress in the backyard, throwing the baseball around, good job, son. And that relationship being so important to establishing the framework of self-esteem and self-worth in men and women, then what do our moms teach us? Our moms teach us the tenderness, the love, the care. And I wanted to sort of start to unpack that with her and show people where I get some of that from.
Well, she did a very good job because the minute I met you, it was like, oh, like this is a guy that I could roll with. There's a real energy to you that's authentic and kind, and you're a big dude, right? You're not a tiny human being, but you did a great job. So kudos to your mom on that. You recently did a panel, which was so impressive. I watched the whole thing start to finish. Unpack that a little bit. What was that like? How'd that come about?
Yeah, I want to give a shout to Jana Mirowitz Turner. She is the founder of an organization called the Antenna Up. And her background is in women's work, sort of, coming up and doing a lot of work around women's sort of rights. And let me backtrack because I don't think I'm saying that right. I don't want to misspeak on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to Jenna Merowitz Turner. She founded an organization called Antenna Up, and she's recently really dedicated herself and her work to elevating the voices of men that are doing this work, to create spaces for us to talk about what's impacting men and boys. And so this last conversation, this last event a couple weeks ago was called Healthier Men at Work. So exploring what it looks like for men to show up as better leaders, as better human beings in the workplace, and sort of all of the challenges that comes with. And then there's an event, the first event that she did that I was a part of was Marketing to Men, right? So talking about the external narratives that we shape around men and boys, and the importance of sort of counterbalancing or countering the narratives that are coming out, sort of from the far right echo chambers, and how do we introduce healthier, more inclusive narratives of men in marketing specifically. So this is a series of conversations that she's curating, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. And the panel that I moderated was about men and the challenge that men have in terms of really tapping into employee resources and employee wellness programs, and why we as men, statistically speaking, don't participate in those programs. So we were unpacking that conversation with some really great experts. And the takeaway from that is, there is a data point that really struck me when I came across it. And that was that there is a $1 trillion opportunity cost to the global economy due to men being disengaged in the workplace. What does that mean? That means there's a lack of productivity, there's absenteeism, there's turnover in the workplace that's costing these organizations trillions of dollars, because we're not addressing the fundamental issues that impact men on a daily basis, whether that's caregiving, giving them the resources to be able to be with their families, whether that's mental health resources, whether that's leadership programs that really unlock the humanity in the ways that men lead. And I was just grateful to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, that's a really big thing. My daughter was born Thursday. I was back to work Monday.
Yeah.
My brand new child, brand new to this world, my wife's first time being a mother, was born on a Thursday, and I was back at work on Monday with no like, hey, take an extra day. Like the thought of that, right? I remember having to, I talked to a mentor of mine one time, and I said, why do I have to tuck my dick in between my legs every time I want to take a day off?
Sure. Yes.
Like, why?
Yes.
Why do I have to go and say, hey, I want to take my wife away for the weekend, and I have to go be less of a man about it? I'm like, I have 2 kids, I have a mortgage, I'm a man, right? But on paper, and I'm a man to your company when you need me to be.
Yeah.
But when I need to go and be a man for my wife or for my children,
Would you mind? Yeah.
would you mind if maybe I could?
It's incredible.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And when you start to introduce this idea of healthier men, no, not at work.
Right.
No.
Everywhere else.
Keep that outside of here.
Yeah. That speaks to the underlying culture in the workplace, because part of what we unpacked at this event was the idea that men are given, there's been a lot of work over the last, call it 10 years or so, to bring awareness to parental equality leave, right? So leave that allows fathers to take paternal leave, etc., that puts it on par with maternity leave. Both are still wildly inadequate, right? How do you say to someone, you can take a month to be with your newborn, right? Like places in Europe, they give them 6 months, up to a year sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So how do you tell someone, take a couple weeks off and then come back to work? But the point is that the culture in the workplace is such that even if there is a healthy, functioning parental leave policy at the organization, men have been programmed to believe that even if you were to ask that for that permission to do it, that is your right by the policy, by the work policy, they still hesitate to do that because there's the peer pressure, the underlying peer pressure in culture that says, even if I take this, when I come back, I may be out of the circle of trust, for example. I may not be given that assignment because the assumption might be that I'm going to have to take a day off to take Jimmy to baseball practice, whatever it is. And I think that is, to me, the bigger work to be done. The policies are the policies. That's a decision to be made by the board, by the CEO and the executive team to say, yes, this is something that we're going to offer. But it's changing the culture behind it that then empowers men to say, not only is this available to me, but it feels safe for me to take. I'm going to go ahead and do this. That, to me, is what's going to make this whole thing fundamentally shift.
Hi everyone, I'm Vinny Brusco, founder and CEO of Agora Social Club. I'm also all of these things. Agora Social Club is Westchester County's hub for guys' mental fitness. Let me show you how we're revolutionizing the future of men's mental health. All accessible via key fob as a member, Agora Social Club seamlessly blends the community, comfortability, and convenience of a coffee shop, community workspace, gym, and recovery center. Since opening in April of 2024, Agora Social Club has helped hundreds of guys become better men. Through our men's groups, dads groups, community ruck walks, and 5Ks, guys are finding a deeper sense of connection through community. But don't just take my word for it. Check out our 5-star Google reviews where guys are sharing their transformative experiences. So what's next? We're looking for an investor to help us build Agora 2.0, a flagship location located right here in Larchmont, offering our members even more space, more amenities, and more community. By the end of 2030, we're targeting multiple locations in 4 major U.S. cities. We're excited to share our vision of the future of men's mental fitness.
Yeah, because the culture of the organization is a branch or the leaf, right? But the actual cultural zeitgeist that's underneath all of that, which is, I need to be late because I need to take my kids to school, right? And listen, there have been concessions at jobs that I've worked with. It's like, hey, listen, this is my role and this is what I have to do for my household dynamic. I need to come at X time versus X time because that's just the way it is. Yeah. And there have been places that have been super welcoming to that idea. It's like, hey, no big deal. And then there's still there are places that are like, right? They make the concession, but in the concession alone, it feels like it's a problem. In the asking alone, it feels like, and that is exactly what you said, the turnaround where people are like, well, fuck this. Or they basically, quiet quit or whatever it's called, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to do the very bare minimum because my life is, and I think you're seeing this more so post-COVID, right? The culture shifted in some regards where people they're seeing the value of their time more. I think the veil has been removed from our eyes to some capacity for some folks where it's like, I just don't want to give you all of my time.
That's right.
Right. It's worth so much more than any amount you could pay me, even like at the highest level. And you start, I think the culture somewhat started chipping away at this idea of like, what is really valuable to us? And, that is the bigger hill to die on, because you could change all the cultures and the policies in the organization, but if men don't feel like they can go to their superiors at a working context and say, hey, listen, I want to do X, Y, and Z, or hey, can I cut out, or without feeling like I'm asking you, right? Like I'm a grown man, I'm doing my job. I need to leave early because I want to catch my son's baseball game. And that's really important to me.
That's right.
It's one of 27 and I want to get to 26 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. You broke so many things down there. I think there are a couple different reasons for why this dynamic has shifted and people are becoming more aware of their time. One was, to your point, COVID really made us all confront our mortality in a real way, collectively, right? We do that on a daily basis in our relationships, in our families, whatever, but collective mortality was the first time in our lifetimes that we ever had to like realize. And so from that came this idea of like, so I don't know if I'm gonna be here today or gone tomorrow. Like I'm gonna enjoy my life. So yes. But the other thing that's happening with the advent of technology and the ways that corporate spaces in corporate America, the ways of working have changed, is that people are realizing that the contract that we've signed with our jobs and our careers is broken. The idea that I'm going to go work for a company for 20 years, like our grandfathers, our great grandfathers did, and hopefully retire, forget about the gold watch, but just get to retirement, right? Or at least get to enough of a body of work in that organization that you're going to somehow be compensated for and valued is no longer.
That's a great point.
That to me is like what people are realizing is like, it's none of this is worth it. And I'm not going to negotiate my family life and what matters to me for that, because I can't even plan 3 years from now, because I don't know if I'm going to be laid off or not, much less 30 years from now. So that contract is completely broken. The idea that, yeah, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to climb up the corporate ladder, and then, there's going to be a payoff at the end. That's why these young people are realizing, like, I'm not going to go work for anybody. I'm going to open up my phone, create some content, and build a business and double down on myself. And I think, we're starting to see, I know we're talking about a lot of different things. I just kind of threw a lot of stuff on the table, but the social constructs, the construct between company and employee is no more, coupled with the fact that we're now learning to value our time, coupled with the fact that the internet is the ultimate equalizer. Anyone can be a business, anyone can be a media company. We're now realizing that the idea of going to work for someone else and asking for permission for things that are natural human needs feels disconnected and disjointed at best.
At best. Yeah. And that idea, you take, my dad was a cop, and so a very different pathway. My mom was a teacher, very different pathway. But if you take like the traditional salesman life, right? Like, death of a salesman type of thing. Like, I think of my grandfather, I was in sales for a long time, like this idea, exactly that. And I don't know who broke the deal, but I think both parties can agree. And I think that's also part of what needs to get discussed. Like, I read this post, it was on LinkedIn. It was like, can we stop looking at people who job hunt as like not being employable? And it's like, maybe they're just aware that they're not in a space that they're willing to tolerate this shit anymore.
That's right.
Right. But we frame it as, oh, this person job hunt, and why'd you go to these places over this course of time? Because I felt the energy shifting, and I'm someone that is now more inclined to follow this than just white knuckle it and force it to happen.
That's right. And I think that also speaks to something that I've always been very aware of, that I talk to the people that I mentor to all the time, is be very aware of whose goals you're chasing. Whose dreams are you chasing? Because a lot of us are not chasing the dreams that we have set for ourselves. We think we are, but we're really not. We're chasing what our parents' expectations are, what society's expectations are, what our circle of friends' expectations are. But how many of us are really saying and identifying the thing that we really want and saying, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go get that. And if more of us did that, I think I would say, I want to use the word courage here specifically. If more of us had the courage to say, I'm going to identify the thing that I really want, even if it looks completely crazy to the people around me, I think we would be much better off as a society.
But how do people find that? It's easier said than done. The word courage is definitely an appropriate word to use in that, because it does take a level of courage and delusion and a lot of resources, supportive networks, just naming a couple. But how does someone find that? How do you tap into that? Guys like us who we've put ourselves, I think I'll answer my point of the courage. I think it's putting yourself out there to some capacity. But how does someone find that on their own?
I keep coming back to self-awareness, and self-awareness isn't this esoteric thing. You don't have to read Marcus Aurelius, or any self-help books to get to a point of becoming self-aware of who you are. I think you just have to have the willingness to interrogate things. Ask, is this true for me? Before you make a decision, ask yourself, am I making this decision because it's for me and it's going to make me happy? Or am I making this decision because it's going to make me more money, because it means this title, because it's going to allow me to go buy the house, because I'm going to take all of those factors are external. How many times do we ask ourselves, The decisions, whether the decisions that we make or not are for us first and foremost. And I think we probably don't, because it might feel selfish, right? To say, you know, what do I want first? But I think there's a difference between being selfish. I don't think there's anything wrong with being selfish.
Agreed.
Being self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-driven is something else. When you're taking from someone else to give to yourself, that's different. But being selfish is not a bad thing. And so I think being a little bit selfish, taking a moment to question, ask more questions of yourself, not of the external environment, is going to start to give you information. And then what you do with that information is what you do with it. But I think that self-awareness is probably the most important start.
Yeah, and I think not wavering from the question. I think that question piece is huge, and sitting with that discomfort.
What do you want?
Right. And being okay not having an answer. Being okay and asking yourself these questions and these uncomfortable questions to some degree, and allowing yourself to say, that's uncomfortable, yet I still have to face it.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable. And that was for me, like going into the sensory deprivation tank. I remember I wanted to go. And I just stopped myself and I said, and this was like really a very pivotal point of it, was that I said, why aren't you going?
Mm-hmm.
And then what came up, not what I navigated through, not what I talked myself into. What came up was, I'm afraid of what I'm going to think.
Yes.
And then I stopped myself and said, you're thinking those thoughts either way. So either you're going to face those thoughts and have a new relationship with them, or they're going to run your life and you're not even going to be aware of them.
That's right.
So you have a choice. It's like the blue pill and the red pill, right? It's like a very Morpheus moment.
Choose your heart.
Yeah.
It'd be hard either way.
Yeah.
So choose your heart.
You can go through it as a zombie.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden wake up one day and go, oh shit,
It's too late.
back there, I had all these chances, this exit to get off,
Yeah.
and I chose not to. And now, because I do believe that moment is going to present itself until you take that path.
And Ben, that's the other part of my answer. It's self-awareness, but it's also for me, and you gave your sort of personal arrival here. My personal arrival is that I don't have many fears in life, but if I do have one, is to live a life unfulfilled. To look back and say, my ancestors came here, my mom struggled, she was an immigrant woman, didn't know the language, still made it happen for us. You mean to tell me that I'm educated, that I'm a man, that I have male privilege, that I can speak the English language, that I have all these relationships, and you mean to tell me that I didn't achieve the best I could possibly do? You gonna tell me that? And so by any means necessary, I'm going to do my best to put myself in a position to achieve the thing that I want to achieve. Because looking back, having wasted those opportunities is the biggest failure. And that to me is also, so coupled with self-awareness, is getting to the point of realness with yourself and looking at yourself and saying, yo, you know you want that thing, but you have not done anything to get to that point. So you have no one to blame. It's on you. And I think that, to me, if men did that, I think we're gonna start to see a lot more men sort of realize, like, yo, I've been living a small life, and I'm not willing to do that anymore.
I'm not willing to do that anymore. I'm not willing to sacrifice anymore, because and it really does become like these overlapping cultural kind of components that all go into this stew. And that's a part of it. Like, I'm not dealing with this shit anymore. I'm over it, right? The jig is up, right? Like I've broken out of it, and it's not an easy path to go on. But it's definitely worth it. It's one that's it's the hero's journey, right? It's leaving the nest and going out and finding yourself to some regard.
You have to, one of my mentors told me that, what is the thing that makes people make decisions, what is the thing that leads people to change habits? And the thing he says is pain. It's where do you put pain? Do you associate what you've always done and what you're currently doing? Do you associate enough pain with that? Because if you don't, and if you have it, you're not going to change. Or do you associate the not getting the outcome that you want? Do you associate pain with that? And if you don't, and if you haven't, you're not gonna get that impulse to go chase it. So it really is your allocation of pain. Where do you put it? And until you place enough pain in where you are in your current circumstances, you're not going to be willing to change. Right. And I'm saying that, I'm using that example specifically for those folks who are, in the gym, doing the thing, lifting the weights, and you see the outcomes in your body, the way your body changes. You're going through that pain for a reason, because you want to achieve an aesthetic, right? You're going through that. You're willingly putting yourself there. And you know that if you don't go to the gym, that soreness that you're feeling the next day is not getting you closer to that outcome. It's the same concept here. It's are you willing to put yourself through enough pain to get to the outcome that you want?
Yeah. And sitting in that. Sitting in those very uncomfortable positions.
Yeah.
And not reacting, learning how to respond and remove yourself from that stimulus, remove yourself from that deal that went wrong, or that conversation that wasn't ideal, and removing yourself from that and giving yourself a lens of saying, like, okay, this doesn't identify me, this doesn't define me, this is just information. And now I can take this information and I can move accordingly.
Yeah. One of the challenges that I have with this work, that I'm always sort of like on both sides of the coin, I know the work that we do is important because we are men, and men need to listen to other men talk about this stuff. But when you distill what we're really talking about, none of it is just applicable to men. What we're talking about is human leadership. It's self-development. It's anyone that's listening to the podcast, and I'm going to use the binary for a minute, so men or women that are listening to the podcast can turn this off, perhaps listen to our voice, but just listen to what we're talking about. And we're like, yeah, like they can realize that applies to me, And so the challenge that I have sometimes in doing this work is, why do we have to talk about it in terms of it being advice for men or leading men down this particular path? What we're talking about is human development. And if we just looked at it that way, and if we took the genders out of it, we took the personalities out of it, what we're talking about is, what does one have to do to self-actualize in this world, in this life that we've been given? Maslow's hierarchy of needs is sovereignty, it's self-actualization. That's all we're talking about here. So I want us to, as we do this work, let's try to take the complexity out of it. Let's try to take the polarization out of it and really hone in on what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, you're a human being. You just happen to have a beard. I just happen to have a beard. But I am interested, if I love you, right? And I say I love you, and I love you because we've just met, but I love you because you're a human being and you're a reflection of me. So I can say that credibly. If I love you, then what that means is that I am interested in helping you be the best expression of who you possibly can be. That's the purest form of love. I'm here to support you. I'm here to challenge you. I'm here to nurture you. I'm here to help you develop, whatever it is. But all of that is pointing in you self-actualizing. That is what we're here to do. And it just so happens that the version of the work that we're doing is pointed at men. But if we were to, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but I felt called to say this because, this idea of men's work is so couched in therapy, and it's so soft sometimes. It's only a caliber of men that do this work. It's like, no, what I'm trying to do is help men be better human beings, not better husbands, not better fathers, not better anything. Those are just labels and outcomes. The source to me is, how do I help you become a better human that sees the fullest expression, the fullest value of you being that human, and how I benefit from that and how everyone else benefits from that. That's what we're talking about here. And sometimes I feel like we overcomplicate it. Sorry, I just went on.
No, that was so beautifully said, man. That was so beautifully said. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's really about God, recognizing God, right? Like seeing the spark of God in someone else. And I think it becomes just what is applicable for us, right? Like it makes sense that we would speak to men or be in a space because, to your earlier point, I am a vessel now. Like I not enlightened, not Christ consciousness, right, but there's a level of self-actualization and there's a level of awareness that I have about life and living that maybe 6 out of 10 guys don't have. 3, whatever the number is, it's irrelevant. But the impact and the fact that I do have a beard and a sleeve and do jujitsu breaks the barrier down for those guys, right? To say, okay, like this is a dude that I could kind of like, I think about, and so much of the work you talked about earlier is like, you're giving yourself the version of you needed at different stages of your life. Yeah. And I think about like, oh man, if I had me at 25, if I had me at 15, if I had me at X, Y, and you could put any age to that. And I think that's the importance of making it men, not versus women, men and women, right? Because I don't know what it's like I have a daughter, I have a son, right? I try to be my best version of myself, authentically me, to both of them. But yet they both have different relationships from their lens with me, right? And neither one's right or wrong. I don't know what it's like to be a 42-year-old woman. I do know what it's like to be I don't know what it's like to be that 42-year-old man, but going back to the root versus the branch, I do. Yeah. Right. And that's the power of the group stuff. Right. And you know that. I mean, you're in a group and one guy's talking about he's going through X, Y, and Z at his job or with his kids or with whatever part of his life. And another guy goes, yeah, I get that. Yep. And it doesn't matter the age, right? We have guys in the group that are in their mid-50s and we have guys in the group that are 25. And it's funny because when you start talking to people like, well, what's your avatar? And me and my partner the other day we were talking about, I was like, men. Yeah. Men. 18, 25, 42, 56, men. Yeah. Because it's a journey. And that self-actualization journey, everybody feels it. Yeah. Everybody has an awareness. It's just a matter of, do you have the resources and the capacity and the space to explore it? Yeah.
Yeah. The vessel is different, but the experience is more often than not very similar.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, I agree with you. It's all applicable to all human beings walking around.
That's right.
It is. And it does boil down to self-actualization. Can you step into a space where you are omnipresent to yourself and give yourself the permission to explore yourself, therefore the world around you and others in a safe space, and then see that in other people?
Yeah. That's love.
Yeah.
That's love. Not romantic love, not flowers and candy. It's, do I see you and do you see me? Well, let me rephrase that. Am I allowing you to see me and am I able to see you? And beyond that, can I hold space for the complexity that you are, right? And then we can throw all the cultural markers, because all of the other stuff that you mentioned are just cultural markers, right? But the basic sort of seed is the fact that we're all human beings.
Yeah. And I think being a parent really gives you such a advantage to that in some way. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Being able to have children and see them and love them unconditionally, truly unconditionally. Yeah. And I've talked about this before, but when my son was being born, my daughter was like, you know, love him more, like thinking that's this fine. I was like, no, what's amazing, there's no bottom to that well of love. All he has done is given me the capacity for more. Yeah. That's all he's done. He's brought in the ability to love even more. And that is such a radical thing, because thinking of God or thinking of infinity or thinking of your future, we cap ourselves because it has to be tangible. Yeah. Right. It has to be right. It has to be a paycheck. It has to be a building. It has to be fine. It has to be tangible. Yeah. When you start to think of space or God or love, the capacity for that is endless. Yeah. And that is so hard to wrap your head around. It is. And it's almost not meant to, right? Like the big problem for me was trying to intellectualize God, trying to have the psychological understanding. Yeah. And then once I was able to seemingly let go of that and be like, oh, it's a feeling.
Yeah, it's a feeling. I just had, oh man, I love it. Just last weekend, in the kitchen and I'm cooking and my partner is like my sous chef. So she's like cutting the vegetables. I'm making soup. And I stopped and I told her, I was like, I'm having a moment right now. Hear me out. And she's like, what's going on? Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just like, I'm so happy right now. And she was like, and I was like, look, I'm happy because My daughter was on the couch watching TV. Both of our daughters, because she has a daughter who's in town. So they were watching TV on the couch, warm house, the dogs running around, playing around. You and I are together. We're making the soup. It's snowy out. And it's just like, it's really cozy. And I'm just feeling this feeling of warmth. I can't explain it. We're not doing anything special, but I'm feeling this feeling. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm appreciating it. And I love you. And I love this moment. And that was God. That was me experiencing that. And the reason I say that is because now I'm speaking to men directly, right? If we allow ourselves to notice those micro moments of joy, that changes everything. Changes everything. The challenge is that we don't allow ourselves to notice it. You could be, I don't know, you could be in the shower and feel like, man, this is the best shower I ever had, or I had this week. And that is God, right? You pulled up and you were worried about parking, and there's a parking spot right in front of your building. Wow. That's God, right? Like it might seem trivial, but when you start to live your life that way with awe and amusement and this childlike curiosity, man, that unlocks everything. And so that to me is like, I don't know, I want to get back to that. Everything I'm doing right now, I'm like, I want to get back to that. I want to make millions of dollars. Yeah, I want to travel. Yeah, I want to have nice things. But I want more of those moments, because when you have them, genuinely have them, and you're present with them, man, that changes everything, though.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up. It was one of the, over Christmas break, I cried so, as you were telling that story, my eyes started watering out. I cried so much over Christmas break. And my wife, I remember I was sitting where I sat at the table. My kids were in the living room. My wife was doing something in the kitchen, and we had like some vibey music on, just sitting there. I'm eating breakfast, and I just start crying. And she's like, "You okay?" I was like, "I'm so good.
Yeah,
I'm so good right now." I was like, I'm warming up now. That I'm like, I'm so good right now. I'm at so much peace. And I think that if you could find that peace, and I quote, yeah, dude, we're crying up over here. I love it, but that's okay, right? Like that's
yeah.
I'm so at peace. And then, I call those, we call those coincidences at first. Then we call them, you start to get into like spirituality or other serendipities.
Yeah.
I've started calling those micro miracles. When you see those micro miracles, and they're all the time and they're everywhere. Even just today, I was like, everyone's complaining about the snow and we're getting more and all this shit. I was like, yeah, I get it. It sucks.
Yeah.
But you know what? In the middle of July, you're complaining that's fucking too hot, right? And then it's gonna be spring and fall. It's too cold. It's too rainy.
Yeah.
Why can't we drive down the street and really observe the snow-capped trees, right? The branches that have the snow on it. Why can't we just be really, really present in like the sound of the snow, as you're walking?
How it muffles the city sound.
Yes. I literally recorded something. I was like, I just recorded something. I was like, it adds a layer of silence that we don't get.
Yeah.
And why can't we and I get it, it's fucking inconvenient.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But can we take that inconvenience and can we look at it from a lens of, man, this is such a season, literally and figuratively, and a pocket that I'm in, that I get to experience this. And it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing, though. And it's the essence of life, right? It's what makes everything else. It's just like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. I just lost my job. It sucks. Fuck, I'm gonna figure it out. But you have family, you have people around you. You live in a world that is naturally life-giving. How do we not realize that every season, regardless of the personal season that we're in, right? It could be a season of job loss, but every season happens like clockwork. You know that after the snow melts, soon after,
It may be August, but
it might be August, but the trees are going to bloom. There's water to drink. You can argue that there is, how do you live in a naturally abundant world, and some people in Flint, Michigan don't have water, but that's man-made.
right.
Naturally speaking,
If we removed all the people,
naturally speaking,
think about COVID when there are dolphins in the Hudson or some shit, right?
Yes.
Like things started getting back to their natural order of things.
how do we live in a world like that and not tap into that? Knowing that the same elements that make up everything that we observe is in us as well, just in a different mix of ingredients, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Right.
That's why when people say you're made of the thing of stars, yeah, we are. It's the same elements. It's just configured in a different way. How do you, when you realize that in its purest form, how can you not be happy? How can you not allow yourself to feel joy? You know, and then spread that joy. I mean, I don't know. I just look, people are going through some stuff. I don't want to, this isn't about completely washing over the fact that we are living in really difficult times right now. Everybody knows that. But within that, there's an opportunity. There's a choice to be made. And I'm choosing, the people that I'm in community with are choosing to take those micro miracles that you talked about and really sit with them and honor them and nurture them and try to create as much of those as possible, because we don't know, we're here today, we're gone tomorrow, right? And so to me, part of that fear of living a life unfulfilled is not doing enough of that as well.
100%. And there's a quote in here on this wall behind me for everything, but the one that comes up is, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. And it's so accurate. It's so accurate. You know, death by 1,000 cuts is a real thing.
Yeah.
And what heals and what cauterizes those wounds are those micro miracles. You know, you could be in pain, you could be going through some shit, but if you could remove yourself and remove your narrative and remove the lens of your story and look at things from that grander view of, it's all in harmony. It's all perfectly balanced. It is all in alignment. That's where you become a healthier individual. That's where things start to move in a healthier trajectory. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's actually probably the opposite, right? You're going to have such awareness of the board that you're going to start to see all the, oh shit, I'm vulnerable here, I'm vulnerable there, but you can now maneuver in a way that is in alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's what they say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the thing about this work that's hard. Any kind of healing work, any kind of work that leads you to an awakening of sorts, right? Whether it's, religious work, spiritual work, you get to a point where you realize, man, it's an overused metaphor, but the Matrix analogy, red pill, blue pill. But once you see what's possible, then you start to realize, like, man, I can't unsee it, number one. But number two, the most important thing is that now I have a responsibility. Now it's up to me. Now it's there's no one to blame. And I think we live in a world, unfortunately, that is, we don't live in a critically thinking society. We don't live in a world, unfortunately, that consists of people willing to take the harder route. And so much of our lives are dictated to us, whether it's social media, whether it's the way that we live our lives. And a lot of it is by design, but also a lot of it is because we just don't want to feel the discomfort and the responsibility of now realizing that the world and the outcomes of my life are completely up to me. Say what you want about the government, say what you want about education, say what you want about finances. The outcomes that you want in your life are completely up to you. In your disposition, in your attitude, and in your energy, and in the life force that you put out in the world. No one controls that but you. Everything else is an externality. And you can say that, like the economic cycles go up and down, people make money on up cycles, they make money on down cycles. You can be happy in up cycles, you can be happy in down cycles. It really just comes down to your disposition and your energy. And I feel like more people, hopefully, if this conversation helps more people realize that we've done our job.
Amen to that. I had the Monsignor from my church come on, and we spoke about that awareness piece. And he said very similar sentiments. Like, once you taste something, you can't taste it. Once you see something, you can't. And my thought was, and you wouldn't want to. Mm-hmm. The thought of going to the before. Yeah. And whether that be, for me, more recently, it's become more of a religious context, and putting faith into Christ and leaning into that. And so many people I know who have stepped into that space, it's a before and after, it's a before and after. And I was like, I want that after, man. That sounds so good, right? And then I had a moment where I almost didn't realize I was living in the after, and then almost removed myself from it. And then I was like, I was there. I was just there. I put the blinders back on, right? And yeah, man, if more people can step into that in whatever they feel comfortable with when it comes to religion or spirituality or just, personal development, there is a real matrix to this. And it does take radical responsibility. But at the same time, in knowing that you also are the creator of your own life and you can live by design.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just much easier to blame something or someone else. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's much easier to, delegate that responsibility to something that you can't control, because the hardest thing in life is to take responsibility for the reasons why your life hasn't panned out the way that you would have wanted it to. Yes, there are externalities. I'm not, it's not a broad blanket that I'm using, but by and large, if you have the ability to be aware of your role in the spaces that you occupy, then I think you also have, if you have the wherewithal to realize and be aware, what am I saying? I don't know. Let's keep moving. I completely lost.
I know you're going with it.
I lost my train of thought there. It'll come back to me.
No, I know you're going with it. It's the idea that if you have the wherewithal and you step into those micro miracles and see them, then you now have to take responsibility, and you can't ignore the responsibility that it takes. And in stepping into that, it's uncomfortable and it sucks, and it's easier to just go, oh, well, it's work, right? Versus saying, I have a role in this, and it's my role in this, and I could only play my role in this.
That's right, and be accountable to that.
Absolutely.
No one wants to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To themselves.
To themselves.
I don't know about you. This is a very timely conversation for me. Again, I'll chalk this one up as a micro miracle for sure.
Love it.
Much appreciated. Really appreciate you coming by, sharing so much of your insight and your perspective, and it's so valuable. And I think, this is what it's all about. These conversations. This is the ultimate form of unfolding of the unknown for me. So I really appreciate it. Where can people connect with you if they want to find the podcast, find out everything that you're doing? Where can they check it out?
No, same for me, Vinny. Sometimes, you wake up and you don't know how your day is going to go, and you don't realize that sometimes as much of a plan as you might have, sometimes leaving a little bit of room for magic to happen is what makes or breaks your day. And so this was the magic, right? I didn't ask you what the questions were going to be, the themes. I just showed up and knew we were going to have a conversation. And we talked about it a lot. We talked about our men's word. We talked about God. We talked about relationships. We talked about micro miracles. And so I'm full, so thank you for creating the container as well. In terms of where people can find me, at Jason _Rosario is my personal handle on all social media platforms. You can also find The Lives of Men at The Lives of Men, on all social media platforms. We've launched a podcast called Man of the House. You can check that out everywhere you get your podcasts, on YouTube as well, video format. And then we recently launched a leadership program called The Manuscript. The cohort starts on March 15th, the first cohort. So check out the website there, thelivesofmen.co, not .com. You can take the assessment there. You can apply for the program there. Limited spots, but would love to work with as many men as possible. So thanks again for the opportunity, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Here.